Welcome back to Comic Book History. You're probably thinking, okay, what am I going to talk about for this one? It's been like a month since I last did this one. Yeah, last one I did was on Black Lightning. That was the last one I did. This one we're talking about my second favorite DC superhero behind Batman, and that is the Green Arrow. Yep. Made his first appearance in More Fun Comics number 70. I have Mark Wagner, sir. Yeah. Reasoning for this character? Why a character came into existence? There is no official reason for it at all. Yeah, though the book itself, his first appearance is noteworthy for also the first appearance of Roy Harper, aka Speedy, aka Arsenal, aka Red Arrow. Yeah, with a few different things over the years. Yes, Green Arrow's attire, basically, I should note though, yeah, with the basically kind of like a green short sleeve shirt, with kind of like a V in the middle and like long green pants, red boots, yellow gloves, and his green hat with the red feather. This was his attire up until 1970s. Yes, the 1970s is when this finally changed. Yeah, and basically he had I have read a lot of the Morphon comics, but mostly I read his appearances from his other comics he did right after this one. Basically, he was simply put a Robin Hood version of basically Batman in modern day, where he had basically the trick arrow thing, which became the concept for Hawkeye years later. And he had an arrow cave, which he kind of still has today, but doesn't have the original anymore. And he had two vehicles in his, let's just say, his transformation. He had the Arrow car. Yes, there was seriously a car called the Arrow car, and the Aeroplane. What happened to these two? Well, in the case of the Aeroplane, it crashed in the 1970s. And it was never mentioned again. Nope, they got rid of the damn thing. The car itself, well, after the 70s, it disappeared. And it didn't reappear until the third volume of the series, which I'll get to later, where it got destroyed. Yep. Basically, Green Arrow blew up his own car. Why? Because. Now, why these aspects were later dropped? My guess is because people saw him too much of a Batman ripoff. I mean, now I have a sidekick, I have a car, basically, a signature car, and a plane. It's something though he never had a boat or a motorcycle. Or something like a whirly bat. But just basically a plane and a car. And here's kind of the strange thing. Yeah, these were his only forms of transportation he ever had, so anytime Green Arrow got around, let's say, his hometown, Star City, it was via his arrows. Now you're probably thinking, did other superheroes have their own vehicle besides Batman and Green Arrow? Superman did. He had a flying car, which he had for a few appearances. The fight Amaza of all people. Wonder Woman had the invisible jet. Flash had a car, which he very rarely used. Green Lantern never needed a vehicle. Hawkman has got a spaceship. Let's see. Martian Manhunter. Well, I know on the Supergirl TV show he had a spaceship, but in the comics he never had the multi-chance. He never had his own signature car. Never did. Aquaman. He's another character who never had his own signature vehicle. Yeah, that was the thing that DC Comics didn't really delve into very much outside of Batman. I mean, people like to rip out a lot of stuff from Batman, but people don't like using the whole thing of... I mean, there's two things that people just ignore, that they just... They rip out almost everything else Batman, all the dark and gritty aspects given other characters, but him having vehicles of their own, or even like a psychic, those are two things people don't usually bring up anymore when it comes to Batman. I mean, people know about his signature vehicles, but do people rip those off for other characters? No, not really. Nothing I can think of, no. Yep. And the thing with Green Arrow is, I mean, for about a few years he was in Morphon Comics, and he moved over to Adventure Comics, which is where I actually first read some of his early appearances in the Showcase book, which I'll get to this trade soon. He was there from in Morphon Comics. He was there from 71 to about 102 was when he finally left. He was moved to Adventure Comics issue 103. He didn't finally leave to about issue 269. That's when he finally left. Well, I think at that point he was moved over to World's Finest Comics, and he was there for a certain period of time. This is, of course, when it was the 100s, not the 200s, where it became the dollar books. Not like where they are nowadays, basically, dollar's a big thing back then. And yeah, and up until the 70s, where it had a lot of changes for him, yeah, that's pretty much what he was doing. Now, in the 60s, there was one significant thing they did with the character in the 60s. Did they change anything about his lore? Did they give him new attire? Nope, he just joined Justice League in the 70s. And he was there a lot of the time to fill in for Batman when he was available. Yeah, he had some pretty good adventures in Justice League, and just like America. But until the 70s roll around, he was basically featured as a recurring character in the pages of Batman, in the book Brave and the Bold, which became a team-up book. He, of course, still featured in Justice League. That was basically the early part of the 70s. Basically, featured in Brave and the Bold, of course, World's Finest, obviously. And then the mid-1970s roll around, where basically Green Arrow had a lot of significant change for him. Like, for instance, he got a new attire. He got his signature goatee, which is not like the goatee he has on the cover of this book. It's his Valkyrie goatee, which was given to him by the awesome Neal Adams. Yep, awesome redesign for the character, and became a singer. And this look for him, he would maintain this look up until the Flashpoint reboot, with the whole goatee, and he would still have this hat that he was known for having. And in case you remember the hood, that was something the 80s established. He also got 2 villains in his rogues gallery. Yeah, he didn't have many. He had a lot of one-shot villains, but basically Denny O'Neil and, of course, Jerry Conway gave him a couple of villains, basically a couple of recurring villains. One, of course, happened to be Count Vertigo, who was created by Jerry Conway, and Trevor Von Eaton, who I met the guy, really awesome person. I met Conway, met him too, and he made his first appearance in World's Finest number 249. Now, here's the thing about this issue. When he made his first appearance, did he make an appearance in Green Arrow's story? Does that have to be Green Arrow enemy? No, he made an appearance in Green Arrow's girlfriend's story, Black Canary. Yeah, Green Arrow was given a girlfriend in the late 70s. Yeah, a girlfriend. The smoking hot Black Canary. Which, here's kind of the strange thing about this character. Originally, it was the same person who debuted back in the 40s by the JSA. By the time the 80s roll around, it was retconned that this was not that particular person, but the daughter of the original Black Canary. Yes, because I was mentioning about her ex-husband Lance. Yeah, those characters appear on the Arrow TV show, but that was a completely different similar name, but it was a PI, and of course he was dead, and she was dating Green Arrow. This relationship lasted up until the 1990s when these two were a couple. And then some more interesting happened, okay? Aside from getting a new look, girlfriend, a couple of bad guys, and of course he was also made part of the Green Lantern book for about a year, where it was written by Denny O'Neil and art by Neal Adams. The first issue of this particular run started with issue 77, where it had Green Lantern charging his ring, and then Green Arrow firing his arrow at the Lantern battery, destroying it. And there was fewer significant things happened with him in the late 70s. He lost all of his money, became an actual Robin Hood, though he still had some money, but he didn't have his company anymore. Yeah, he didn't get his company back until around the 80s. Yeah, that's when he got his company back, though he gave it up quickly. And let's see. After a certain period of time, after being in the book for a year, though issue 87 is also noteworthy. It's a good, they have this little road trip story, really good set of stories, how I recommend it. Issue 87, which was a couple issues before the book would go on hiatus for a few years because of low sales. This issue is significant for, if you've seen the cover for this particular issue, it's a story called When Snowbirds Fly. It is basically Hal Jordan telling outed Speedy, Roy Harper, as a heroin addict, and basically the cover is simply this. Hal Jordan bringing Green Arrow into a room which has Speedy, and he's taking heroin. And he's shocked by this. And what's Green Arrow's response? Threw him out of the frickin' place they were living in, and Roy Harper had to live with Green Arrow's girlfriend, the smoking hot Black Canary. Yeah, it took him some time, but he finally recovered. Roy Harper himself became a government agent not long after this. Yep. Roy Harper is somebody I can delve into another time, because even though, yes, he's still connected with Green Arrow, a lot of time, basically, like around the 60s and 70s, he basically stopped and featured a lot of Green Arrow stories. He would occasionally be featured Green Arrow stories, but he was a regular feature of the comic book once it became part of the Teen Titans. Heck, even afterwards, he was basically never part of the book again. He was occasionally appearing, but not really. After the book basically was put on hiatus for a few years, he was moved over briefly to Flash Comics as a co-feature with Green Lantern. And then he was featured in Action Comics for a few years. Yeah, he was also featured as featured in that book for about a couple years. Then finally, the Green Lantern title got revived, and this team of feature lasted to issue 122, where that ended. And then he basically was moved full time over to World's Finest Comics, where he was there for a few years, and he was there for a while, and pretty much like as soon as his World's Finest feature ended, then he got his own miniseries. In the early 80s, mind you, yes. He got his own miniseries, 4 issues, written by Mike W. Burr, artwork by Gerard Von Eden. Now, I should mention, though, this book featured Count Vertigo. For some strange reason, I don't know why this was. Apparently, like, all of Count Vertigo's early appearances from the moment he debuted up until Crisis on Infinite Earths, all the appearances were drawn by Gerard Von Eden. If I get a chance to meet him again, I'm going to ask him, like, why did you draw like almost every single appearance of Count Vertigo? Yeah. And that was basically simply like Green Arrow be given a bodyguard because apparently there was somebody after him. He had to fight Green Arrow in the miniseries. And after this miniseries, now this was the first Green Arrow any book with its own title on it. So this basically, the success of the miniseries would lead Green Arrow to get his own ongoing series in 1988. But before that, he got moved over to Detective Comics. He had his own backup feature in the book, which also led to Black Canary dropping her signature look she's known for having, her classic look she's had since her debut. The fishnet stockings, either the black or blue jacket, the corset top, the blonde hair. Yeah, the blonde hair she kept. They switched out for a one-piece jumpsuit with white wings on it. In case you see like the early Justice League International issues, she wore this very outfit. And She had this outfit throughout the rest of the 80s, and she did eventually switch back to the outfit in the early 90s. This was the outfit she wore, and this was during the period of time where Green Arrow got back his company. Yep, and then Crisis on Eros happened, where the Earth 2 version, they retconned the one period in the 40s and 50s, the early version of Green Arrow, up until the 60s. That was the Earth 2 version of the character, one period from the 60s up until like present day. That's the Earth 1 version. The Earth version died. Yeah, he died. And Green Arrow didn't do really that much in Crisis on Infinite Earths. He basically was a minor character in that. And after Crisis on Infinite Earths, we had another strange change to the character, where we had Mike Grell, who had basically been an artist for Green Arrow in the past, took over as a writer and artist for the character for the miniseries Green Arrow Longbow Hunters, which introduced one major character to the Green Arrow mythos, Shadow, a woman who developed an attraction to Green Arrow at one point when, get this, and this actually happened, I haven't found the comic when this happened yet. Apparently when Green Arrow was having a fever, basically suffering from a fever, Shadow convinced that he was Black Canary, and they had sex. So basically Green Arrow is a superhero who's been raped. Yeah. That's not a joke. He was seriously raped by this woman, and she later gave birth to a boy named Robert, possibly named after Robert Queen, Green Arrow's father, and popped up a few times, didn't really do anything of note, Robert Queen. Shadow, of course, would continually appear in Mike Grell's run for the book, which came right after this. Yep. Now, the significant thing about the Green Arrow Longbow Hunters miniseries is that we have introduction to, besides the introduction to Shadow, we also have Black Canary losing her power, losing her supersonic scream thanks to a serial killer who captured her and proceeded to torture her, which also apparently lost her ability to have children. Yes, so this was later fixed thanks to Chuck Dixon. Yeah, that was kind of dumb. Now, the reason why Mike Grell did this, because he wanted a little more realistic feel to the characters. And Then he basically started up his own ongoing series as Green Arrow with him as the writer, and originally Dan Jurgens at the book. Yes, Dan Jurgens, the man who basically in the 1990s became the definitive Superman artist. And of course, people know him as the creator of the monster Doomsday. Yep. During basically Mike Grell's run, aside from introducing Shadow, who came back as a recurring character in his run, we also saw the introduction of basically, we saw Green Arrow move to Seattle, have him basically stop being called Green Arrow, despite wearing the costume, though he would wear a hood. Yeah, that was something that the Green Arrow TV show, Arrow, actually took from the comic book, was basically him wearing a hood, which he would wear the hood for a long period of time. I think he wore the hood up until the late 90s. Yeah, he wore this hood, but never wore the Domino mask. Nope, he never did. Except for a couple appearances. But a lot of time he basically wore the hood, and basically we opened to kill people. Yes, aside from the addition of the hood, he would kill people. We saw also the introduction of the character Eddie Fires, who was a recurring character throughout Mike Grell's run, and even the writer who was the first major writer to succeed him, Chuck Dixon, when he took over the book for the last few years, the comic book in the 90s. Mike Grell himself would stay in the book for the first 80 issues of the book, and the book would have the book would end in 137. We'll get to that in a minute. The book had 5 annuals, the first 3 of whom were written by Denny O'Neil. The first annual was a crossover between basically the first annual for The Question, Green Arrow, and Detective Comics, all done by Denny O'Neil, called Fables. My guess is DC probably thought, hey, Green Arrow, this was good. Let's do another one. This time without Detective Comics. Let's just have Green Arrow and The Question for their annuals, written by Denny O'Neil. And then annual number 3, simply put, if you look at it, if you read the issue, it's simply an epilogue to the Question comic book, which is being published at that point. That lasted for a few years. I highly recommend checking it out. It's a really good comic book. Which, surprisingly, no, these 2 annuals for the Question never collected in trade. Never have. And, of course, did Mike Grell write any annuals for this volume? Yes, he wrote the last 2. And here's something quite strange, though. After annual number 5 came out, there was a single published for 20 years. Yes, it took 20 years for Green Arrow to publish another annual. Yeah, I'm not kidding about that. And he also had this thing where, if you read the comic, there would be these 6-issue story arcs basically happen in the summertime, because I read some individual issues, basically, the book, that's what I know about this, where the book publication would increase from 1 issue a month to 2. So in 1 year, Mike Grell put out basically, about 15 issues a year, and this lasted for several years. After issue 80, he left. Though toward the end of the run, he finally had Roy Harper make an appearance in the book. We also had a guest appearance by Hal Jordan, out of costume, mind you. Reason? No powers. Also, this book basically had Black Canary in the nude. Yeah, you actually saw her butt in this book several times. The fact that Green Arrow and Black Canary had sex frequently in this whole book. There was more violence, and in case you're wondering, because this book was mature line, basically predecessor to Vertigo, did it have a foul language in the book? The answer is no. The book did have a guest star appearance by Warlord of all people, a character Mike Grell himself created back in the 70s. He guest starred for about a couple issues. Great 2-part, by the way. And people attacked Warlord for a very simple reason, because of the strike of resemblance he had to Oliver Queen. He hated that fact. He briefly had scummers for them, eventually got fight, and of course took out the criminals. After Mike Grell left after 80 issues, though he did during this run produce 2 miniseries under this particular era. He did the Green Arrow Wonder Years miniseries and a Brave and the Bold miniseries, where it had a team up between Green Arrow, The Question, and a character called The Butcher. 2 great miniseries. Wonder Years not much. It's a pretty interesting miniseries. I don't remember much about the Brave and Bold miniseries, where it features that 3-way team up between Green Arrow, The Question, and Butcher. Highly recommend it. It's a really good book. Black Canary, of course, toward the end of the run, basically broke up with Green Arrow and got her own spin-off book, which lasted for 12 issues. And then she's moved to Birds of Prey, where she stayed up until, mostly up in either that book or the JSA up until the Flash reboot. Green Arrow himself, basically before we had a regular writer, we had 1 year, we had rotating door writers. Yes, we put Alan Grant, Chuck Dixon basically chimed in, Kelly Pudick did for a few issues, but there was no definitive writer from issues 81 and 92, and then with 93, of course, in 92 we had the introduction of all people, Connor Hawke, who became the second Green Arrow. And then with issue 93, actually was 92, up until the final issue of the book, we had Chuck Dixon take over as the regular writer of the book, and throughout these, and from issues 92 to 101, it's a story arc, basically kind of her, and of course he would not wear a diamond mask, basically wear like cloth. He would tie around his head with a couple eye holes. Yeah, basically he also hang out in Vegas a couple issues with Deathstroke. Yep. And then toward the end of it, by issue 100, you know that, yeah, he basically set on a plot to blow up Metropolis via a plane. Yes, a plane with a bomb on it. And you're probably thinking, wait, the same thing to do with 9/11. Nope, this came out years before 9/11. Where, because they're over Metropolis, and the one we know you're over Metropolis in this issue, because Superman shows up in the issue 100. Yep, he shows up, and if you read the issue, you probably think, okay, why does Superman have long hair? Where he's nowhere to have short hair. There's a reason for that. You have to read Death and Return of Superman to understand the reason for that. That's where his moth first shows up in. Because when he's not in Superman costume, he's got a ponytail. But when he's in Superman form, he has it like strung out. He lets it down, mind you. And of course, Green Arrow basically is caught in an explosion, which kills him halfway through issue 101. Now, I did ask Chuck Dixon about this. Why was he killed off in this issue? The reason? Editorial mandate. Yep, the editors deemed that he really wanted to get rid of this, so they kill him halfway through issue 101, and from that point forward, up until the final issue, we had Connor Hawke take over the book, with Eddie Fires as his supporting character. And for the first couple years of the book, he basically did a lot of traveling. He did a crossover with I think it was the Detective Comics, Robin, and Nightwing, called Brother of the Fist, which is not in trade, mind you. And during the last year of the book, the way he was reading the book, like his mother basically was getting tired of him running around the record planet, just settle down someplace. So she picked San Francisco by pure randomness, bought him an apartment building in his name, and yeah, and in case you read this run, like, hey, this run, the way it sounds, like an arch or an apartment building have hijinks that happen in the apartment building. This sounds a lot like the Matt Fraction Hawkeye run. I don't know if Matt Fraction inspiration from this run. I have no idea. But the book was basically canceled issue 193. 93 was 137, there was one issue afterwards, which kind of hints at that Green Arrow was alive. This was basically never resolved for 2 years. Yep. And of course, Connor Hawke himself was featured by the Justice League, and he would get his own miniseries, Connor Hawke Blood of the Dragon, which features Shadow and trying to save her son, which had the same blood as Connor Hawke. Yeah, but then we had something interesting happen. We had the awesome Green Arrow Volume 3 series, started by the awesome Kevin Smith, who did the first 15 issues of this book. The first 10 issues is a 10-issue storyline. Then with Green Arrow's return, we have him basically get examined by his body, and of course the reasoning behind his resurrection, deal with Hal Jordan, who was actually the Spectre at that point. And he says the reason why he brought him back is he missed him. And he kind of reset his mind to basically what he was back in the 70s when he was on a road trip. And of course, when he reunites Black Canary, they have sex. And in this hilarious scene where Green Arrow basically comes out of the bedroom, and the JSA are there, because of course they are. He gets an argument with Hawkman over the fact of his obsession with Hawkgirl. And then here goes Black Canary, comes out of the bedroom, completely naked, mind you. Apparently, everybody knows that she's naked, and she says, "Mr. Terrific, can you help me, please?" So, Mr. Terrific uses T-Spears to censor her breast, her groin area, and her butt. Which I thought was so hilarious. The most funniest thing to use. Mr. Terrific's T-Spears. And just by sheer coincidence, he's just happily there in the room. And this is Mr. Terrific, like, he's thinking, damn, this woman is so hot. Why are we happy? Why is she walking around completely naked? The reason, because she and Green Arrow just had sex. That's the only reason why. And he had moved back. He moved out of Seattle. Yeah, he's no longer in Seattle, but the Black Canary still lives there with a flower shop. Yeah, that was a thing, basically, during the run. She ran a flower shop. That was basically their home for years. So he moved back to Star City, basically came back to what he was doing. We also debuted a Brick during this era. And, of course, he hangs out with his son, Connor Hawk, which is more accepting of him, unlike in the original run, basically, where he hated him. And then we had the following arc, which basically had the debut of Onomatopoeia, a character Chaosman would frequently write over the years. Yes. And then we had, like, after he left, then we had Brad Militzer take the book for a handful of issues, which had him fight Dr. Light from Identity Crisis, where he basically had a thing for raping women, because Brad Militzer outed him as a rapist, because he raped Sue Dimity Identity Crisis. So, had that mindset. And then he left, and we had a few issues, basically, I should point out, though. They're written by somebody else, and they had one issue where basically there's a few issues basically published in this era that between the end of Brad Militzer before Judd Winnick took over the book. First issue had Green Arrow have a rematch with Count Vertigo, first time since the 80s. They fight, and they don't fight again until the current continuity, until Jeff Lemire writes the book. Because that's a strange thing. Count Vertigo is a Green Arrow villain, but he doesn't fight him after this. Count Vertigo, what was he doing after the miniseries? He got moved to the Suicide Squad, and he hung out basically Amanda Waller for years up until the Flash reboot. Yep. And then we have a cross-up with Green Lantern, which at the time was about Joe Winnick, which this cross-up actually ended Joe Winnick's run on Green Lantern, and had moved over to Green Arrow at this point. And this storyline was the introduction to Abedsur's son, Ahmed-Sur, ended with the Black Sun. No, it's not the same organization from Star Wars. This is a similar name. It's a crime organization, but this organization has nothing to do with the organization that popped up in Shadows of the Empire video game. It's a completely different organization. Yep, and then after this, we had Joe Winnick over the book, and he was a writer up until issue 75, though he did write. There was a couple issues he didn't write. There was one issue. Also, there was one issue. There was like 3 issues he didn't write through his era. The one issue which had featured the return of the Arrow car, which Green Arrow destroyed in the issue. We also had fight Solomon Grundy in basically his old Arrow cave, which he abandoned, though he had a new one years later. And the Return of Anarchy. Oh, there's one thing I forgot to mention. It had the debut of Mia Dearden, a.k.a. the second Speedy. She didn't become a Speedy until Judd Winnick took over the book. Yeah. Mia Dearden was a prostitute who was later outed as HIV positive. She had AIDS. And this character was around up until the Flashpoint reboot, where she disappeared and then popped up again until the writer of Arrow. I'll get to that one soon. And basically, it was an interesting set of stories, basically under Judd Winnick, though some of the basically questionable. Like, first arc he did had a debut of Black Lightning's niece, which he incorrectly called her his daughter for some reason. I have no idea why. Also, believe it or not, Green Arrow had a one-night stand with her. Yes, Green Arrow, who's on the same age as Black Lightning, had a one-night stand with Black Lightning's niece. Yep. And, of course, she got killed in the storyline. And, of course, Black Lightning took the blame for the death of her killer. Though this is later retconned later on as the person who killed her killer was actually Deathstroke. And this was given to the Outsiders by Red Hood. That's not a joke. They had a good set of stories basically after this. Oh, there was one issue that was not written by Winnick. Featured Return of Anarchy first time in a few years. And then we had the Infinite Crisis stuff happen. And after the Infinite Crisis, something weird happened. 2 weird things happened. First, we had Star City get a wall around it. The reason for this wall? I have no idea what was the reason why the wall existed for. Though by the end of the run, the wall was destroyed. And Oliver Queen became the mayor of Star City. He was mayor for pretty much the remainder of this run. Throughout the last part of the run, he introduced the Constantine Drago. No, it's not Constantine. John Constantine, different character. He's a martial artist, and he was one of the last new recurring villains they introduced. They also introduced a crooked police commissioner who Green Arrow had problems with throughout his run. And then by the end of the run, Green Arrow destroys the wall. Well, actually, it was a guy who was posing as him destroyed the wall as his last act as mayor before he resigned. And then we had the final issue, which had the issue end with Green Arrow proposing to Black Canary. This led to a couple one-shots, basically Black Canary getting on mini-series, and eventually them getting married in the Justice League of America wedding special one-shot, which these two got married, though wedding interrupted by civil, so marriage was officially official. And then we have Andrew Kreisberg. Yeah, he was the guy who basically took over Jeff Lemire. We had him take over the Green Arrow and Black Canary comic book, which lasted initially for 29 issues, though was revived for one issue for Blackest Night, which saw and during this run we had a debut of Cupid. Yes, Cupid, a woman who was obsessed with Green Arrow, which yes, this carried over into the Arrow TV show. And she had this thing where she really wanted to kill Black Canary just so she can get her hands on Green Arrow. And Connor Hawke was in the series as a supporting character, along with Mia Deer. Basically, the Green Arrow family. It's a good set of issues. And the Blackest Night issue basically had just Green Arrow as a Black Lantern because he had died before. Yep. And then we had the Cry for Justice right after this, like almost immediately right after this happening, where not a lot of some things happened. The Green Arrow stuff basically didn't like the outcome of what Justice League were doing because what happened in Final Crisis, which all that apparently death of Batman, which was a retcon as him being sent back in time, and death of Martian Manhunter. So Hal Jordan and Green Arrow want to go after the Secret Society, which they never found in the miniseries. Basically, it's a bunch of bunch of strange things happening, and they even have one issue basically cut to a scene that apparently finding look like a bunch of sea lizards. Apparently, two of them were freaking Black Man. Apparently, some were actually Black Manta, Mr. Freeze, and Bizarro. Yes, and one of these issues also opened. Had a scene not only that, but also the issue opened with a close-up of Supergirl's chest. Why? Just cause. At the end of the miniseries was the controversial thing happened, which set up basically a Green Arrow storyline that ended because of the Flash reboot. In the final issue of the miniseries, and I'll kind of basically vaguely describe Cry for Justice. Read it. It's one of the most strangest books, and it's considered to be James Harper's is not one of his best. It's considered not his best work he's ever done. Yeah. Or somehow the main villain of the miniseries, Prometheus, who is a Grant Morrison villain, mind you, yes, a Grant Morrison villain did everything happen in the miniseries, where he apparently planted bombs in various cities, including Star City, which Star City blew up. And the reason for this? No reason. And it was revealed in this very issue that Roy Harper's daughter, his child daughter, was killed in this explosion that blew up Star City. Now, this is Leanne Harper, mind you. Now, as far as I know, there's been no explained reason for this, of why this is happening. Basically, you could say this is done for shock value. Which kind of it is. And then the issue ended with Green Arrow basically putting Arrow and Prometheus in and saying, "Justice." Bless you! And this led into the fall of the Green Arrow miniseries, which, believe it or not, had the continuing numbering of Green Arrow and Black Canary. This lasted for a couple issues, written by J.T. Kroll. This led into a new Green Arrow ongoing series, which was ended at the 15 issues, which there was with Brightest Day, with a forest popping up, and basically Green Arrow basically being supposedly charged with death of Prometheus. But here's the thing. The jury pronounced him not guilty, so the judge basically overruled that and exiled him from the city. Yeah, I've heard about this, and like, oh yeah, you think you look at the evidence, so just throw the case out? Yep. And this particular era had debut in the first story arc of Isabel Rochef, Yes, it's the same character, basically, played by Summer Glau in the Arrow TV show. Though in this one, she was actually claiming to be the lover of Robert Queen, mind you. And in the TV show, she kind of was. But in the comic book, there was no really actual claim to it at all. She's just insane. She disappeared after that storyline, never mentioned again, and in the first issue, killed off the Crooked Commissioner. Yep, we also dealt with stuff with Swamp Thing, and it was a pretty good set of issues. And then Flashpoint happened. Yep, Flashpoint happened. And then Green Arrow could not, and then we had the first story happen, where we couldn't keep a stable writer of the book for some strange reason. We had J.T. Crow, Dan Jurgens. We had about 5 writers write 6 issues. There's no reason for this at all. And after these writers left, we had Ann Nocenti take over the book for about 10 issues. Was there a new villain pop up in these issues? Not really, no. And then we had Jeff Lemire take over the book, which this felt like basically kind of like a retooling of the character. And this run, in my opinion, saved the book for cancellation. This run had basically brought in Shadow. First time since the Flash happened, basically Green Arrow a sister, which never had before. Introduced a new villain, Komodo. Brought the return of Count Vertigo. We also had the return of Brick. Yeah, first time he's been seen since the since before Flash reboot. We also had the debut of a new Rachel Dragon, aka Rico Draws. This character was also featured on Arrow. The new villain, basically, first off, was Komodo, who is the main villain throughout most of this entire run up until he got killed off in the final issue by his stepdaughter, who was actually Miko Queen, aka Oliver Queen's half sister. And it was during the storyline that revealed that, oh yeah, Robert Queen's alive. But I forgot to mention that a couple years prior to this, we had sort of a retelling of Green Arrow's origin story, which is basically the basis for the first season of Arrow, written by Andy Diggle, which also served as a character who they named after the show, who was John Diggle's younger brother. And they had him as a bad guy, which everybody knew that. Yep. And also in this era, we had the introduction of Green Arrow having a support staff, something he never had before. And in case you're wondering, no, Arrow did not introduce this concept of him having a support staff. The Green Arrow comic establishes just prior to the start of the show. The show started in 2012. And then Lemire left after issue 34. I actually have no idea why he left for. And he had Kreisberg come back to the book since the Green Arrow Black Canary book, which he had introduced a very boring villain, John King, and brought in Mia Dearden for one issue. Also, Lemire brought in John Diggle to the series, which he was there up until Kreisberg left the book. Excuse me. And then we have, and after he left after 6 issues, then we have Ben Percy take over the book, who did a few story arcs of the book throughout the course of 12 issues. The first story arc had the return of the female Tarantula, which a lot of people know her as the woman who raped Nightwing. And despite what Devin Grayson says, yeah, he was raped. Yep, it was an interesting start to the book, and then we had him becoming a werewolf for some reason. No idea why. It lasted for a few issues. We also saw Green Arrow Annual, which led into the storyline, and then we had the final few issues him fighting Deathstroke. And then we have the Rebirth era happen, with Ben Percy still as the writer, though they changed the artist, and this was a great era. This era brought back Eddie Fires, we had new set of villains, the Ninth Circle, and it was overall really, and of course Shadow came back in the book, great era, 38 issues, not sure why it ended for, but it did. And then after Ben Percy left, apparently DC could not keep a writer on the book again. First, you had Colin Kelly come on the book for a couple issues to do a follow-up to it, a Deathstroke ending I think everybody forgot even happened. Yeah, Deathstroke ended number 2 when during the previous volume of the book. Not the one by Chris Priest, one came before that. And then we had the woman who took over Batgirl did a couple issues. Then we had, that was Marguerite Scott. It wasn't her, it was John Barber who did a couple issues. And after he left, which had Green Arrow breaking into prison for a couple issues. And then we had the Benson book, which they had a pretty good set of issues, which they did fantastic job writing Green Arrow. I think they would have with the book if DC had kept them on the book instead of letting them go and bring in Colleen Kelly again for the last few issues of the run, which this was this run did have one annual, which was tied into No Justice, deal with a box, which apparently DC forgot even happened. So the final issue had them basically dealt with this box, and in the final issue, couple issues, and then he went on the run. And then after this run ended, what did DC do with the character afterwards? Well, after this run ended, he popped up in Leviathan. That's it. After the miniseries happened, he has not appeared since then at all. He has completely disappeared from comic books. And he doesn't have a comic anymore. And he had a TV show recently. Yep. Now, as for the trades, mind you, there is one book that collects the Silver Age / Bronze Age, like this other half of Silver Age run. That's a showcase book. The first volume of the Green Arrow comic book is not in trade. Do not know why, but it's not in trade. The second volume for the series, the first 80 issues are in trade. The first two, the annuals, are not in trade. Though after the first 80 issues, the only issue you find in trade is basically stuff that cross out with the Flash. Volume 3 is mostly in trade, except for the issue that featured the Count Vertigo rematch, the issues that cross out Green Lantern, which are, by the way, not in trade even from the Green Lantern perspective, the issue where Solomon Grundy showed up, the return of the Arrow car, and the Anarchy issue, but most of this run's been in trade. The entirety of the Green Arrow Black Canary run, that is entirely in trade. Basically, from that run forward up until recently, all from that is in trade. It's just that DC has not bothered to finish collecting anything in trade when it comes to Green Arrow. And of course, we had the Green Arrow TV show, well, the Arrow TV show, which most of the characters I've liked the interpretation of, basically in TV show, with the exception of Count Vertigo, which I think they did a really terrible job with him. If you want to know more of my thoughts on the Arrow TV show, check out my TV show reviews, basically, or at least my things I was wrong or right with the first few seasons of Arrow. But yeah, not much else to say about Green Arrow. He's a great character. DC, get this man an ongoing series again. And for the love of God, do something good with him. Okay, so yeah, that's it for this particular review. My next video I'm going to do is review on the newest episode of Boruto. Okay, see you next video. Bye.